Hello, and welcome to Natural Selection, as told by me, Brayden. First of all, it's important to realize that natural selection and evolution are not the same thing. Even though they are often talked about in conjunction with each other, evolution is an idea supported by many other theories, and one of those happens to be natural selection. To understand natural selection, you have to understand what evolution is. Evolution is the process by which different kinds of organisms are thought to have developed and be diversified, or the development of an organism over time. Most organisms turn from simple to complex. Another theory of evolution is called the theistic theory. The theistic theory states that life is so complex and diverse that it cannot be described by a single act, but several acts guided by God. Now let's talk about a certain guy from the 19th century who famously traveled to the Galapagos Islands and created the theory of natural selection. The Galapagos is an example of an archipelago, like Hawaii. And Darwin found that there was the same species of birds on each island, but each was slightly different. There was a total of 14 native Galapagos birds that fall into the classification of the Darwin finch. And then in 1859, Charles Darwin wrote a book called On the Origin of Species, where he defined natural selection as the principle by which each slight variation of a trait is useful and is preserved. Now, what was interesting about the birds was their beak, because the beak differed depending on what island that bird inhabited. That's because each island had slightly different food sources, so the bird's beak changed depending on what would be best suitable for their environment. That goes to show that variations in a population are not random and are actually influenced by their environment. Okay, I have 3 different single-colored environments that each hold 3 different single-colored organisms. Let's see how they do. As you can guess, certain organisms are going to do better in certain environments. Like, if you're pink in this black environment, I'm sorry, but you're just not going to do that well. You're too brightly colored for this dark environment. But now let's change the environment, but keep you the pink organism, and see how you do then. Well, congratulations, you survived. Natural selection is a bit more complicated than organism just being, hey, you did better than us, maybe we should try that. It's a combination of, are you adapted to the temperature? What is there to eat you? What is there for you to eat? Is there a disease you're not immune to? Is there parasites that might hinder the population? The dodo bird is my favorite example of survival of the fittest. Now I just need to clear a few things up right away. The dodo bird is known for being kind of a fat pigeon, but that's not quite true. That was drawn by the Europeans who never actually ventured and actually saw the dodo birds in person. The dodo bird was actually quite slim. The reason it's an example of survival of the fittest is that when the Europeans came, they brought along with them rats, pigs, things that scurry along the ground. And since the dodo bird lays its eggs on the ground, their eggs were eaten up by all these new things that they've never had contact with before. So they were not adapted to lay their eggs hidden or up in the trees. So only 174 years after they were discovered, they went extinct. There's just one big idea that I want all of you to realize before you leave this video, and maybe you'll learn something. Hopefully you'll learn something. You and everybody around you and everybody else in this world are shaped by their environment. For the good sometimes, and sometimes for the bad. When you think about it, life is pretty awesome. Everything is so complex, but also sometimes really simple. What is really a fun thought is that you are slightly different than your parents, than your grandparents. Your children will be even more different. We're really evolving with every generation. That's the cool thing, the slight changes that make you different from your parents, but also make you very much alike. I'm Brayden, and this has been Natural Selection.